Well, hello everyone, and welcome to the podcast. My name is Billy Dees, and I'm here today for HO Press, Shore House Books. I want to say hello to Donna Kavanaugh, and also want to shout out to all of the people over at HumorOutcasts.com. That is the place to take a humor break. New content posted pretty much every day. A lot of political stuff, a lot of satire, you name it, it's there. HumorOutcasts.com. On the phone with me right now is Bill Spencer. What's going on, Bill?
Hi, Billy. I'm honored to be on your podcast. Thank you very much, and thanks to your listeners for listening.
Okay, well, that's very generous. Honored, yeah. Hopefully it'll be a good experience for you. Put me under a lot of pressure when you say you're honored to be here.
No, I am.
Okay, let me tell the audience just a little bit about you.
Okay.
Bill Spencer's humor writing has been published by numerous outlets, including Funny Times, Narrative Magazine, Reader's Digest, The Sun, and our own HumorOutcasts.com. Bill has also published scholarly articles on the novels of Cormac McCarthy. I hope I said that right. Is that correct?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. And has written more than 140 comic skits performed by the Wildacres Writers Workshop. He has also co-authored an unproduced screenplay entitled Angel Pays a Visit. Bill taught English for 31 years, 25 of them at Delta State University and 6 at Western Carolina University. He lives in a cabin in the mountains, which these days is probably a good place to be.
Yes, it is.
Yes, with the bears and the moose and everything away from people, right?
Exactly.
And that's in North Carolina with his wife and artist, poet, Carolyn Elkins. We're talking to Bill Spencer today about his new book, Uranus is Always Funny, short stories to make you laugh. Now, speaking of pronunciations, a lot of the scientists, I guess, they call it Uranus, right?
That's not what I'm expecting my readers to say in their head.
Oh, yeah, that's obvious. That's not what most people say.
I think that is the usual pronunciation.
Okay.
Somebody might be trying to avoid that pronunciation.
Yes. Okay.
That's the one I'm going with.
That's the one we're going with. And it is always funny. You can't ever talk about that planet without getting a laugh. I mean, it's built in.
I hope so.
Okay, you're in North Carolina now. Is that where you've always been from, or did you make your way there from somewhere else?
I grew up in Middle Georgia in a town called Warner Robins. That's about an hour and a half south of Atlanta.
Oh, okay. Mm-hmm.
So the South, but my father was from upstate New York. I don't know whether you think I have a Southern accent or not, but I had a Southern mother, and my father was from New York. And it wasn't a typical Southern town because there's a very large Air Force base there, and my friends' fathers would get transferred out every couple of years. So, there was a lot of mobility in that town, which is I don't think is typical. I also lived in the Mississippi Delta for 25 years before coming here to North Carolina.
Okay. Yeah, I noticed just a tinge of a Southern accent. It's not particularly... it's not like a Jeff Foxworthy routine or anything like that, but I can pick it up. What was your family life like growing up?
It was really good. I grew up with 3 brothers, and as far as my humor writing goes, I should probably tell you a little bit about my father. He was the one who loved to laugh so much in my family, and he would ask me to watch a lot of TV shows with him. I think his favorite was Hee Haw, and that wasn't my favorite, but, it was comedy. And he loved Jonathan Winters and Red Skelton. I think we watched Laugh In, Bob Hope specials, maybe some Flip Wilson. Yeah. And I have an essay in the book about my father, about his sense of humor. And one of the things that he did, he sent me a clipping. It was about a TV show, and in it, the headline said that these two law enforcement officials were born to butt heads. And so my father sent me that clipping, and he knew that I would read it as they were born to butt heads. And he knew I would get a laugh out of that. That was his sense of humor. And so I also watched, I had a misspent youth. I did watch a lot of situation comedies growing up. I liked the Beverly Hillbillies a lot and the Andy Griffith Show.
Yeah.
And I sort of thought the Beverly Hillbillies was funnier, but that the Andy Griffith Show had more heart to it.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you know this, but there was actually an Andy Griffith rerun Watchers Club, and I was a member of it.
Well, you kind of come from that, from the way you're describing, that generation when there was, I would say, wholesome, friendly comedy. You seem to be like before the era of, let's say, All in the Family or Maude or Good Times or any of those.
Right. My childhood was those situation comedies.
Yeah, yeah.
Also watched Gilligan's Island, for example.
Oh, sure. I watched them in reruns, but I always enjoyed that. And I was always a Marianne. Were you a Ginger or a Marianne type of guy?
Marianne.
Marianne, okay.
Definitely.
Although a little ginger once in a while is not a bad thing. Okay.
Ginger was a little too glamorous for me.
Oh, okay. You taught English for many years. Were you a reader as a child? And that's what I get from a lot of educators and all that. If you got to get kids to read early, and it really helps them. Do you find any truth to that? Did it apply in your case?
Absolutely.
Okay.
I read, I think, almost all of the Hardy Boys detective mysteries. That was a lot of fun to me growing up, and I'm pretty sure I read all of the Black Stallion series of novels. But I didn't start out as a strong reader. In the first grade, I was really struggling. Mm-hmm. So much so that my mother, who was a teacher herself, started teaching me phonics after school at home. And so by the third grade, I was in the advanced readers group. So I really owe a debt to my mother for that.
Yeah. When you talk about yourself, were you always like a funny guy, one of the guys who was the class clown? No, they can sometimes disturb the class for some reason. For some reason, I don't have you pegged as that. But were you just a generally funny kid? Did it come naturally to you, or did you develop a style of comedy as you got older?
Well, I've always liked to try to be funny, and I was not a class clown, but I've always loved language humor, especially puns.
Yeah.
And, not everybody appreciates puns, but so I've always liked humor and especially language humor, but I would not describe myself as a class clown just because I was not disruptive. I tried to be a good student most of the time. But I wanted to confess that in first grade, I did get S minuses for conduct.
Oh.
Because and the way I remember it was a long time ago, but I think I was making snide comments about the teacher to the girl that was sitting next to me. Oh. And so that's when I first learned, Billy, that talking to girls gets you into trouble.
It sure does. It sure does. But I have also been told that, when women talk about things that they like, a sense of humor always seems to be at the top of the list. So that was probably a good thing.
Right. There was a Maxim magazine article a few years back, and when they asked women, it's so hot when a man, and then it just had ellipsis, ... And 4 of the readers said that they found it so hot when a man made them laugh.
Yes, yes.
So I thought that was pretty good.
Yes. As far as writing, specifically for humor, when did that start? When did you begin saying, you know what, I think I have an angle here, maybe I should do this?
Yeah, I did write academic papers for a number of years, but my humor writing, I think, started because of Writers Workshop. My wife and I have been going to for 25 years.
Oh, wow.
It's the Wildacres Writers Workshop. And at the end of the week of that, there's a show put on, a sketch comedy. And these are very short skits, like 3 minutes, 5 minutes, no more than that.
Yeah.
And somebody asked me to act in one in the early years. And then, what happened was every year, one of my friends there would say that somebody had this skit idea for Pirate Wheel of Fortune. And the premise was going to be that whenever Pat asked them what letter to choose, these pirates would say R, and that would be their only answer.
Yeah.
And so it talks about that every year, and I thought finally I'm just going to write that skit. And ever after that, I've written skits for this show, and that taught me a lot about comedy because people either laughed or they didn't at what I thought they would laugh at. And the show was videotaped, and I would study those videos every year and try to figure out why the audience laughed or why they didn't laugh.
Yeah.
And so that was kind of my comedy apprenticeship. I didn't study it in a class. I just kind of analyzed it.
Yeah. Well,
and
go ahead.
Well, that's how it started. And when I started writing essays, I found HumorOutcasts, and I can't tell you how important that is to have a place where to have an audience.
Sure.
Because that's such a strong incentive to write, to think that you can reach people, and that's not an easy thing to do.
Yes. No, it's not. They say what's the old saying? Dying is easy, but comedy is hard, right?
Yeah, and you know that too. I know that you have some background in stand-up, and
yes.
That's to me would be the hardest kind of humor to do.
Yeah, and there's no predicting. What always got me about that is audiences are very much like individual people. They have different personalities, and it's funny how a collective group of people like that can have a personality. I'm not exactly sure what the psychology is there, but you just never know. Something you say one night will go over like gangbusters, and on the next it'll fall flat. And I just never found the handle there. I don't know what happened.
Right. Well, one of the things that I noticed from watching the tapes is it was very helpful to have somebody who had a great laugh in the audience.
Yes.
Because if that person had a great laugh, would just kind of give it up and just let the laugh go, it would encourage other people to laugh also. So that was something, if you could hire some good laugher to be in your audience, that would help. And I do know some play director who always hoped that the people coming to the audience would have some drinks before they came, because that made them a much more responsive audience because they just were more relaxed.
Absolutely. The laughter is contagious. There's no question. And that's very true. And you have a little bit of an advantage at a comedy club because people come there and they want to laugh. When you do a gig that's a corporate gig or something before a speaker or something like that, you don't always get that. So now this book is a compilation, I will say. It's a lot of little short stories, little short essays, maybe a better word. And I kind of like that because for a lot of people, sitting down and reading a book happens over a period of time. So if you have a book that has an intricate story, sometimes you'll read a few chapters one day, and it might be another week before you get to it. Whereas this here, you can pick it up anytime and pick something out of it. What gave you the idea to compile these stories for your book?
I'd say I myself really like to laugh. I like all good writing, but over the years I noticed that I especially appreciated it when the writing was good and it made me laugh. So I thought, that's a real gift. And I think anybody that puts out a humor book is trying to give the audience, to give some readers some comic relief.
Yeah. And
a lot of people are looking for that these days. Some people need it, and some people just enjoy it. And so I guess you could say I put this book together just for laughs.
Well, that's a good.
And I'm trying to make it a gift to the audience because I like to laugh myself.
Sure, and that's something that we need a lot of, which kind of leans me. You mentioned the climate today. How would you describe the style of humor that you have, especially in this book? Is it outrageous, sarcastic, political? What kind of an edge do you have?
I'm going to say it's not political.
Okay.
I did try writing political humor for a while after the 2016 election, but my political humor was too bitter, and I stopped. I thought I want to make my audience feel better, not worse. But all of the essays in the book are nonfiction. There might be one exception. Jesus does stand up, but they're all inspired by real events. So I'm gonna say my style is domestic. It's based on everyday life, mine and the everyday lives of my relatives and friends.
Yeah. I kind of like the title you had it a born to pun. That's a real good one. That's a good one. You had mentioned how difficult it is to be funny. What are some of the challenges associated with writing humor?
Well, I know there are a lot. One for me is I write a lot about experiences that aren't naturally funny. Now, some are. Once when I was in a real slump, I heard that there was going to be a race of outhouses on skis at a local ski slope, only about a half hour away. And so that was easy to write. That was an easy essay to write. But most of the time, I'm writing about things that weren't funny at the time. And so one of the first ones I wrote was about how much I hate meetings. And I had to take that through 3 drafts before I found how that was funny. Yeah. And I've got essays on bad student evaluations, on my wife getting sprayed by skunks.
Yeah.
I got attacked by geese once, and ticks are a terrible problem here in the woods where we live. So all of those I have written humor essays about. And so I think it's just, it takes work and creativity and kind of a sense of fun to turn those into something that readers can laugh at.
Yeah.
Another challenge I'd mention is just how different people's senses of humors are.
Yeah.
One of my friends has an app on his phone, and it plays fart noises, each with their own name, and he finds this hilarious. It's he plays it, and there are all these different noises. And while he's laughing, his wife's looking on, and she's got maybe an apologetic look or a slightly pained look on her face when she's doing this. So, we have to keep that in mind. Humorists have to remember that what's funny for one person, it might be too gross or too vulgar or too obscene or profane for somebody else. So we just have to keep that in mind.
Yeah.
And sometimes you might reach part of your audience, but not everybody.
Yeah, and you just have to keep in mind that it's going to be a certain amount of a crapshoot no matter what you do. And that especially applies to political correctness, and that's something I want to talk to you about, because everybody that I've talked to that does humor, even though they might not do political material, you are always walking on eggshells now, no matter what part of society you're talking about or making jokes about, and it can be completely innocent. So in this climate of PC, as they call it, is there an obstacle to producing humor content?
Yeah, I think the short answer to that is that yes, it is an obstacle, but it's a good obstacle. Like a tennis net is an obstacle when you're playing tennis, or maybe flag gates on a downhill ski course would be obstacles, but they make it more fun.
Sure.
They make it more of a game. And I think even before there was the idea of political correctness, humorists had to contend with this. And what I've noticed is, with my skit writing, is if people think you're being mean-spirited, they will not laugh.
Yeah.
If they think something is offensive, they do not think it's funny. And so you always have to keep that in mind. I want to just give you one example.
Sure.
About, I wrote an essay recently called How I Won My Wife. And before I started, I thought, well, that's kind of a politically incorrect title. First of all, the possessive pronoun my, like my wife belongs to me, and I know that that's an area of sensitivity. And so I just talk about this in the first two paragraphs of the essay. And then there's the word won, how I won my wife. I realized that that's not really politically correct to act like my wife is a prize. And so I say in the essay, believe me, I know better than anybody. My wife is no prize. And so I try to make fun out. I actually try to make humor material out of this kind of obstacle of political correctness.
Yeah. Well, that's an interesting approach.
Right.
Thank you. Yeah, it's an interesting approach, and at least you're trying to, do something positive with it, because I've found it very cumbersome. I mean, as a podcaster and somebody who does digital media in other areas, sometimes it's a real minefield. And some of it I understand. I don't want to ever hurt anyone's feelings or offend them, but it just seems like the threshold now, one syllable out of place, and you're in big trouble. So as a former professor and teacher of writing, what do you think is the most important lesson for aspiring writers today? And I know there's a lot of them out there. I spend a lot of time on Twitter. There's a lot of hashtags like MWriting and all these other people who try to support each other. What would be something that you could tell them?
What I would tell my freshman composition students is they need to think a lot about their purpose for writing and their audience. And I think that applies not only to essay writing, but to any kind of writing, even if it's creative. I would tell my students, Edgar Allan Poe wrote that you need to figure out what effect you want to have on your audience before you begin to write. And so that's the same thing as purpose. Like, what are you trying to achieve with your writing? And for me, I want my audience to laugh. I want to give them the gift of laughter.
Sure.
And so that's what I'm trying for. And kind of closely related to that is the importance of audience. You need to know to whom are you writing. And you talked about with stand-up, audiences are different. It changes night to night, but you do need a good idea of who it is you're trying to reach and what are their interests. And so the way that what I would turn this into in the way of practical advice to aspiring writers is they need to find somebody that they trust, a kind of a writing buddy, to give them feedback on their drafts. Whenever they write something, get feedback from somebody you trust. Now, some people join writers groups. I'm very fortunate. My wife is a brilliant editor, and she looks at everything before I publish it. And if she says it's not funny, out it goes.
Right. That's that's a great partner to have.
Yes, it is.
And a lot of people don't have that. They're either by themselves or they just simply don't have the support group within their family. So sometimes that can be hard. But I know,
right?
And then I use my wife as a springboard for a lot of the things I'm doing as well, and that's just it's a fabulous, it's a fantastic trait to have in a partner. Absolutely.
Amen.
Yes. Obviously, it's a humor book. You want people to laugh. But are there any particular takeaways or something that you would like to convey to the reader? Some impression you want them to have?
There's a whole section in the book about my teaching experiences, and so I'm hoping that those essays will be very supportive to teachers.
Yeah.
Not only do I have essays, but in the very back of the book there are quite a few pages of student bloopers that I collected over 31 years. These are when my students made me laugh. And so I think it's helpful to teachers. They're having a really tough job right now.
Yeah.
Just if they can see that other people sympathize with what they're going through and they have something to laugh at. One other takeaway, there's a whole section about my relatives. And there's several essays starring my wife, which is a good thing because she's a lot more interesting than I am. And so this whole section is on family relationships, and so if any of your listeners have family relationships, I'd say this is the book for them.
Yeah. This is the obvious question, where can people find your book?
Right now, only at Amazon.com, but it's in paperback and Kindle. I think that in the future, people can probably find a big box of my books in my attic.
Oh, yeah. Well, I have a lot of old tapes and things too of myself that went absolutely nowhere. But so I understand, but I have a feeling people are going to want to get this because in this day and age, it's so nice to be able to just grab a book, have a few laughs. You don't have to sit down and read the whole thing. You don't have to remember what you read a week ago. You can pick it up anytime. It's great for the coffee table. The title again is Uranus is Always Funny, and see, it makes me laugh. Short Essays to Make You Laugh by Bill Spencer, available on Amazon. And Bill, I want to thank you for giving us some insights into your writing and your background and why people might want to check out this book. Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for being here, Bill.
I appreciate it.
Certainly. And I want to say again, we are here today for the fine folks at HumorOutcast.com. That is the place to take a humor break. A lot of the authors that are featured on HumorOutcast.com are part of their publishing umbrella, which is HO Press, Shorehouse Books, and a number of others. So do check out the fine people. Lots of great content posted every day. Funny stuff, HumorOutcast.com. And if you're looking for a book, get away from all the craziness, the debates, and the politics and everything else that's going on, elections. We've had enough of that. This is a fun book. Uranus is Always Funny by Bill Spencer. Thank you very much, Bill.
Thank you, Billy. Bye-bye.
So long. And to our folks out there, thank you very much for listening to our podcast. And just a reminder, on HumorOutcast.com, you can find any of the podcasts that they've done, not just the ones I've done, but you just go to HumorOutcast.com, go to the podcast tab, and there you go. I'm Billy Dees. Have a great day.